สวัสดีครับทุกคนครับยินดีต้อนรับครับ Welcome to another coding session with Spot Skills. Today we're going to continue where we left off วันนี้จะต่อไปจากครั้งที่แล้วครับ First we created this menu item up here and we got it set up on the background. Then we arranged these items here in the showcase properly. And then last time we worked on getting Flexbox or Grid แล้วแต่คุณครับใช้วิธีสะดวกกับตัวเองครับ so you can choose whatever method you're comfortable with. And now we're going to work on this section down here. And here they have done it in a way that there's a background and also some styling to it that has a wave to it. We're going to show you how they did that little wave. And then when we resize the boxes don't change all that often or all that much. And so we're going to do that same exact kind of styling here for this section. And I'm going to use specifically today วันนี้ผมจะใช้วิธี flex ของวันนี้ครับ So with that, let's get started. There's a few things on the HTML that I have to clean up. So I have, in our planning, made some small little changes or small things that I want to change up, and I want to be able to adjust them. And so I'm going to make these changes real quick. I'm going to make this wider so you can see the changes that I'm going to make. In here, we have our About Offer. We have our About Offer background top and About Offer background bottom. I'm going to treat these the same. I'm going to get rid of the words bottom and I'm going to get rid of the word top and save that. And also, I am going to toss in these three. ผมจะใส่ทั้ง3วิธีนี้ or ทั้ง3 element นี้ข้างในกลุ่มของตัวเองครับ so we're going to put these in their own group. And so if we look at it, there's 3 elements in here. There's 1, 2, and 3. Element 1 is the left image. Element 2 is the arrow. And element 3 is that text on the side. So we've got 3 things in here, element 1, element 2, and element 3. So I'm going to put these in their own grouping, and I'm going to put them into a container. So once I have them in a container, I'm going to add in this About Offer Content class here so that we can call it up again. And I'm going to move this div down here. And one final change that I want to make is in my planning, I use this image keyword. Well, this does work. Clearly, it does work, and there are images that show up here and all these other places where images are. But this is an older keyword that's no longer really referenced by CSS. So จำเป็นต้องไปเปลี่ยนไปเพราะว่าผมใช้คำศัพท์จากสมัยก่อนครับ So I'm going to choose all of my images. Make sure that you use the caret keyword or the highlight the caret here if you're using Sublime Text. Otherwise, you'll pick up this images in the source and you'll change that too accidentally. So all 3 of these will change at the same time. Notice how this one changes, this one changes, and this one changes, and all the others at the same time will change. So if I type in image again, all 3 will edit at the same time, or all of them on the page will edit at the same time. I can just hit that, hit escape, and I am done with that one. And then we can come and highlight this one. With this one, I can highlight simply the last caret because I know that there's no other image with that last caret in it. And then I can come down and change all of these. IMG. Done. Save that. And now everything stays the same. Our centering applies because we put that into a container just from our HTML. Cool. So now I'm going to come back to our style CSS. ผมจะเปลี่ยนสีข้างใน style CSS เพราะว่าผมอยากแสดงว่าใช้ styling นี้อย่างไรครับแล้วข้างในนี้เขาใช้ images ครับ so if we go CCC we see a darker background we see these 2 images here and now we're going to extend these images and put a background to it so you can see how this really works. So inside my About Offer, this is my About Offer, we're going to do a .about offer and we're going to change the background to using variables, CSS variables เราจะใช้ CSS variables ถ้าไม่ชัดเจนกับ CSS variables ข้างบนมี root แล้วก็เราจะแค่ define variables เรียก variables or เขียน variable definition ความหมายของ variable เราจะเขียนข้างบนนี้และส่วนเวลามากจะใช้ให้ color หรือ property และเราเก็บ property และใส่ข้างในattribute ของเราครับ so we can grab in the primary color this way and the primary color will automatically invoke this. We don't have to type this thing out every time. รำคาญมากน่าเบื่อมาก and it's hard to remember. All I have to do is remember primary color. So here, instead of typing in that number, I can just do primary color. And now we have this nice greenish background that matches this one. And if you notice at the bottom, ในล่าสุดครับในข้างหลังครับ we have this little green taper here underneath this image. That's really annoying. And so what we have to do, CSS automatically adds in a padding of 3 pixels. So it adds in 3 pixels at the bottom of the image. So for whatever reason, I don't know the history of it, but I know it exists, and it's very annoying. And so one thing, if you do see that line going across, all we have to do is get rid of the line height and make it 0 for the entire container, and then that ends up going away. So that line height is no longer there. The line height is 0. Instead of having a padding of 3 pixels or an increase of 3 pixels, it's now down to 0. Okay, now we're going to stretch the width of these pixels or this image. We're going to stretch it from here and make it all the way to full screen. And so how do we do that? About offer background img, and we're just going to do a width of 100%. And once we get that width of 100%, we see now it stretches across the entire page. Very cool. Now, one thing I want to show is we have a gray background. ตอนนี้มี background สีเทาครับ ถ้าเกิดว่าจะเปลี่ยนไปถึงสีขาวจะดูอย่างไรครับ so FFF, and now we've got this nice look that matches what they have, very similar to what they have. So there we go. So we've got this cool little background that looks nice, and now we're going to work on these 3 elements. มี 3 element ข้างในนี้เราจะแค่แก้ปัญหาข้างในนี้ครับ so first and foremost, let's work on the left image. อันนี้คือ left image. ผมจะได้รับand one thing I am inconsistent, I did something very inconsistent here, and I did left arrow and image. So I'm going to take off these the sides in the images, and we're just going to stick with about offer right, about offer arrow, and about offer left. That makes it much easier to deal with. So I'm going to grab the about offer left, about offer left, and I'm going to grab the image itself, and I'm going to give this a particular width. Actually, sorry, before doing this one, I want to get into the arrangement. I'm going to show you how to use flex inside here. So about offer content. So we're going to work on the flex side of this. So about offer content, and we're going to just do a display of flex. And once we do that, all the images are lined up properly right next to each other. 1, 2, 3, good to go. All right, cool. Now, if we start to make this bigger or smaller, they all retain their box sizing. So that's cool. And I'm going to reduce the size of the left side image. So about offer left image. And I'm just going to give this a width of 550 pixels. So make it fairly consistent. And makes it much smaller. Cool, so it's not so big. Now it's a little bit smaller, easier to deal with, easier to manage. And here I'm going to then do the about offer right. I'm not going to worry about the arrow, but I'm going to take care of the right side here. About offer right. And here I'm going to do the same thing with 550 pixels. We'll see what that looks like. Shrinks that down nicely. And what I'm going to do is, since we're now all the way moved over to the left side, I want to bring this into the middle. So inside my flex, I can do a justify content center. So that'll push these 2 items into the center. So now it's taken up the middle of the page. Very cool. And then I'm going to go back to my offer right and do a background of white. Cool. And now what I want to do is work on that little arrow. And with the arrow, I am going to stick that in between here, dot about offer arrow. And the arrow, I'm going to give it a width, first of all, of 200 pixels. That'll make it much more narrow. And now with the margins, that's how we're going to control the overlap here. So my margin on the top, margin here, I'm going to say probably around 150 pixels from the top. Nothing on the left side. On the bottom, I don't want anything either. But on my left side, sorry, the top I want 150, right I want 0, bottom I want 0. The left, I want to push it negative. If I do a positive margin, ถ้าเกิดว่าทำ positive margin จะไปถึง left จาก left ถึง right, negative margin จาก left ถึง left even more. So here I'm going to do negative, let's just say 50 pixels so we can see the changes happening. And now we see it moved down 150 pixels and it moved inside 50 pixels. So I'm going to make this 150. So now that's even closer. We've got a very similar look and feel to what we've got here. And we've got that arrow on top of the image inside. Cool. And that's basically it. If we want to make this a little bit bigger, smaller, whatever, all we have to do is change in the image sizes, and then the image itself will resize to the box. So we can change all those real quick. So we have individual control over the elements if we want to resize. ก็ตอนนี้ผมจะเปลี่ยนไป text ข้างในนี้ So this is all inside my offer right. So about offer right title, and make sure we have the right element. I'm doing display none quite a bit just so I know that I have the right element. And I'm going to get rid of the word side here. Again, that was a mistake on my part, so we can get rid of those. And so right title, right subheading, and right para, that's fine. Oh, and I noticed that I missed a big capital R there. There we go. So now I want to change this to font size of 50 pixels. Cool. And what I also want to do is I'm seeing that there's not a whole lot of space here. So inside my offer right, I'm going to add in padding. On the top, I don't really want too much. I'll add in 30 pixels. On my right side, I probably want around 50 pixels. On the bottom, I don't really care because there's enough space. ไม่ต้องคิดเกี่ยวกับ bottom ของนี้ครับและข้างด้านซ้ายผมจะเพิ่มประมาณ30 or yeah 30ก็ได้ครับ So we'll see how that looks, and that gives us a bit more space here to be able to work with. Cool. And now I'm going to work on changing this color to the green color that we have here. And that green color, I'm going to get rid of the top pixelation. Just see what that looks like. There we go, much better. Now all I have to do is add in the green span class to this element. Why? Because the green span we added up here as a utility class. เราเพิ่ม green span มัน utility class แปลว่าเราใช้ก่อนทีนี้ครับ we used that before for this one, which we can then apply to this one, which automatically gets applied to anywhere else we've done a green span, like right there as well. So now that we've done that, we're going to work on the subheading dot about offer sub right subheading. And I'm going to do a display none again. And that'll get rid of this special offer, gone, so I know I have the right element. I use display none quite a bit just for testing, just so you'll see when we get into responsive, I'm going to hide some elements, and I'm going to use that display none quite a bit in that regard. So that's why just knowing display none is there is good practice. But the font size here, I want to change up to 30 pixels. We'll see how that looks, and give it a font weight of normal. There we go. So that looks much better. And then about offer right para. And about offer right para, I'm going to give this a line height of, let's say, 1.5. See what that looks like. Gives it a little bit of extra line height. And one thing I don't like is the letter spacing that I've been using so far. So I'm going to change this up to 2 pixels. And we'll see it have a much bigger difference, much bigger impact, more readable. Nothing is scrunched in together. It's not scrunched in together as much. So I kind of like the letter spacing of 2 pixels. And I might just end up applying that globally, but for now we'll leave that here. If I wanted to, I can put it all the way up into my body, into the default variables, and then it'll change the letter spacing for everything. So it looks a little bit cleaner, it's a lot more readable now, and I can actually see the letters. So for me, I like the letter spacing there. So just know that letter spacing is kind of nice. If you change it to 1 pixel, it goes kind of back down to where it was, but it's not. But it's kind of nice to have that letter spacing variable. All right, cool. And that looks like we are done with our section inside here. So if we shrink this, the images take up the full container when they're shrunken down to the maximum, and we see that we can change up the height or the height changes. We're going to work on responsiveness and figure out how we want to be able to deal with the responsiveness for this. But in the meantime, now it looks like it's pretty much settled. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask ถามมีคำถามเขียนได้ใน Facebook หรือใน YouTube ของเราครับถ้าเกิดว่าอยากเห็นlesson อื่นๆในอนาคตครับจะบอกว่าเขียนในคอมเมนต์หรือแนะนำบน YouTube, and we're happy to make those lessons and figure out how to help you. If you have any questions, again, feel free to ask. And with that, thanks for today. Bye, everyone.